Hi everyone, and welcome to another of the Childline London Pride events. We're having a fantastic week and we've had lots of amazing events. Thank you to everyone who's taken part, and a special thanks to Joe and Alex for organising everything. Today we've got a really great talk that's going to be from Ashley Conrad. Hi Ashley, how are you?
Morning, morning. I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, excellent. It's brilliant that you've made time for us. Our volunteers are learning a huge amount from all of the events so far, and I'm sure that this event's going to be no exception.
Yes, it'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. I've got four really good, really different people lined up to talk to and ask questions and just learn about their experiences.
Brilliant. I think your first guest is Josh Rivers.
Yes.
So I will admit Josh and sit quietly and let you do what you do.
Yay. So we've got Josh Rivers. Welcome, Josh. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
Okay. Uh, First up, who is Josh Rivers? How would you describe yourself, like professionally?
That's such a great question. I don't actually get asked that kind of question often. I have recently discovered that I feel my purpose is as a megaphone for the queer community. So I help gather and amplify stories. I help people tell their stories. And I feel like that's my role within the ecosystem of change, is to help amplify and make louder the stories of our community.
Where is your accent from? I love your accent. I saw you live a few months ago, and I said to my friend, "Just love this man's accent."
Thank you. I was born in the UK, but I went to high school in the US, and I moved back to the UK 16 years ago now. So it is whatever kind of accent that is.
Still pretty strong. But how's lockdown been for you?
The lockdown has been up and down. I think, like for many people, I hit a couple of mental health hurdles. I also felt very conflicted that, I live at home. I kept a job. So there was that kind of tension between how many people in our community were feeling and my relative level of comfort. And so I spent a lot of lockdown trying to figure out, well, how can I be of service, more of service to other people in our community? How can I help uplift other people, amplify other people's stories, etc. So like many, it's been difficult, but a blessing, and also a great opportunity for some reflection and some personal growth.
It has. Let's talk about the podcast. So Busy Being Black. What does that even mean? It's a great podcast, by the way. I have been watching, but what does that mean? Watching? I've been listening. What does that mean?
Busy Being Black is it's a statement of intent, right? The name came about kind of organically. I was having a conversation with someone, and we were having a really difficult conversation. It was a white friend, and I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm busy being Black. And I was like, aha, that's a really great name for something. And I didn't realize it was a podcast until I went through a very traumatic experience in my life. And as part of that healing process, I was having conversations with queer Black elders and comrades and friends and lovers. And people were offering me such wonderful advice, insight, wisdom. And I thought people really need to hear these conversations. They need to hear the collective wisdom that our community has earned, right? That hard-earned life experience and that knowledge that they can pass on to other people. And so Busy Being Black, the podcast, was born in that moment. And I'm really, really proud of it.
I like it. It's I forgot. Why did you choose a podcast? Because there's videos, there's all different mediums. How come you chose podcasting?
Because I was inspired by other podcasts like On Being, which is, I listen to it religiously every single week. It comes out on Thursday. It is my go-to podcast. And I really love how Krista Tippett takes listeners and her guests on this journey. And I think there's something private about podcasts. When you put in your headphones, it's only you and the other person on the end of those headphones. And I think there's an intimacy that's allowed with podcasts that doesn't really happen in other spaces. So I was really inspired by On Being and wanted to create something intimate, vulnerable, tender, that allowed us to explore go places we might not normally get to go as queer Black people.
When I used to watch Oprah, and Oprah was on, I used to say it was like TV for the soul.
Yes.
And I feel your podcast is very much like that. You've got the voice, and then you've got the guests, you know, some of the guests, and then your quotes. You are incredible at quoting things. I don't know how you do it, if you've got a script or if it's just from memory, but it's amazing.
I am a data gatherer. My mom pointed that out to me a few years ago, that I consume, I move on to the next thing, and I'm just kind of gathering things, and I'll be having a conversation with someone, and I'll be like, someone said this in 1964, and it just pops into my head. And I think I love the fact that there's a wild and big and important history for the queer community, the queer Black community in particular, because that's who I mostly speak to and with. And so the history, these nuggets of information that I kind of hold on to are from this deep dive into our history and trying to fill in the gaps. And so when someone brings up something and I've learned about it, or I've read about it somewhere, or it's kind of tangentially linked to something else, I like to bring it up, because I think it's important for us to kind of populate our present with people and topics and themes of the past. I think it helps us all make sense of our lived experience.
Now, on a personal level, you describe yourself as a queer Black man. What has that been like presenting to the world? How are you accepted? Are you not accepted?
I don't know if I'm not accepted. I made a decision when I came out that I was never going to go back in the closet. And it's very important for me, while I have kind of contentious feelings about the coming out process and the kind of way that it's lauded as the apex of the queer experience, like once you come out, everything's fine. I just don't believe that. So I have contentious feelings about that. But when I personally came out of the closet, I made that commitment I was never going to go back in. And it's very important for me that I show up as my full self, and that I show up as queer as possible. Like right now, I'm wearing little tiny hot pants. Like hot pants are one of those little things that bring me joy. And that when I'm mincing through the city in my hot pants, I feel incredible. And it's just a small thing, right? But being openly, outwardly, proudly queer is really important to me. And I hope that, other, particularly young Black people, will see me and my queerness and in my comfort and the pride that I carry in my skin and being who I am. I hope it inspires them to be who they are.
I like it. You are, well, I guess you didn't have growing up.
Yes, that's exactly. Thank you for saying that. I'm trying very hard to be an example for other people in my mistakes and in my successes. None of us is perfect. A lot of us are trying very hard, and I feel that I'm ready to step into that role as someone that other people can look up to. And sometimes it's hard to admit that, right? It feels very kind of hubristic and grandiose. But I do want to be the person I didn't have growing up. I do want to do that for other people, for sure.
Looking back, do you sort of see any improvement in society? Is there things that you would do now that you wouldn't do back then, or you didn't see back then? Or we still got a long way to go?
I think we have a very long way to go. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being honest about that. I think that we at once have to acknowledge and lift up and name our elders in the community who fought during the AIDS crisis, who fought during the civil rights movement, who in little quotidian acts of resistance, just living day to day, have made our lives possible today. I think we absolutely have to acknowledge those people. I think we also have to admit that as a new generation, and as a generation coming up after me, which I think is Gen Z now, we have to carry on doing the work. Like, our elders got us to a place, we have to take the mantle and we have to keep pushing it forward. And so I think that, one of the things I say to people all the time is, young people know the world we live in. They're not dumb, right? They can see, they can feel, they can hear the world around them. And they know that we are living in a world that feels claustrophobic and small and like it's going backwards. And I think that we as adults have to be honest. Like, yes, right now it is bad, but there are so many people fighting tooth and nail so that you inherit the world that you deserve to live in. So I think we have a ton of work left to do, and that if we band together and we're honest about that work, that we can get it done.
Yeah. I want to ask you really quickly, what's the future of Busy Being Black?
Oh, Busy Being Black is going to be a television show. It is going to be a multimedia platform for queer Black voices. It's going to be a celebration of our Blackness and our bodies and our lives and our dreams and our hopes. It's going to be a celebration of our ancestors. It's going to be a repository for knowledge. I have such big hopes for it. I want to create something world-changing.
Yeah. When though? When is this going to happen? Because I've heard
it's already in process. It's already in process. Don't you rush me, Ashley. No, it's already in process. It's baby steps, right? And I think any of us who are building something or trying to make our way in the world, we have to remember that it's step by step. And my journey to creating Busy Being Black is unique, and the future of Busy Being Black is unique. And I have to remember to breathe, take my time, that I'm in this for the long haul and a marathon, and it'll happen as I continue to put the pieces together. And you know, what is made for me and my community will come to be. So
I love that answer. That shut me up.
Shut up, yeah.
Quickly, you do stuff with UK Black Pride. What do you do with them?
So I'm the head of communications for UK Black Pride. So I help UK Black Pride tell its story and make sure that people know about it and who we are. And I also handle the communications for Lady Phil, the co-founder and executive director.
In your opinion, why is it really important that we have UK Black Pride? I have to admit, I've been once. I came late to the game. But why is it so important that this space and this event and this celebration is had?
I think that all of us from the diasporas, we have unique cultures, customs, backgrounds, lived experiences. And I think it's very important that we have spaces that we can call our own, right? So often the conversation about UK Black Pride is put forward in opposition to Pride in London or mainstream Pride organizations. You know, if mainstream Pride organizations were more inclusive, we wouldn't need a UK Black Pride. Well, that's simply not true. We're always going to need spaces for us, by us, about us, that celebrate us. And so even if everybody does their job properly, we're still going to need a space for UK Black Pride to celebrate who we are. And we should always feel comfortable to celebrate ourselves in this way. There is a certain connection that I have with other queer Black people and other queer brown people that I just don't have with queer white people mostly. And that's okay, right? We have a similar lived experience. We can empathize, understand with each other and understand each other. And so I think it's important that we come together and we celebrate who we are and that connection that we have as queer people.
I love that. Where can we listen to your podcast?
Busy Being Black is available wherever you listen to podcasts, including Pandora in the US, Spotify globally, and Apple Podcasts.
Okay. And very, very last question. Where's your social media? If you want to follow you on your journey and your marathon to building Busy Being Black. It's a lot of bees.
I'm at _ Busy Being Black on Twitter and at _ Josh Rivers on Instagram.
Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today, Josh.
I'm so glad
really
to
appreciate it.
Here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have Nick Dawes, the founder of Real Queers. Welcome, Nick. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Ashley?
I'm okay. It feels like I haven't seen you in ages.
In a little while.
I know. So first up, tell everybody who Nick is. What does Nick do?
All right. So yeah, I'm Nick. I am the creator and director of realqueers.com and also a producer. I produce visual content for the queer community.
Can I ask, how do you identify?
I identify as trans non-binary.
Okay.
So my pronouns are they, them, or he, him.
Lovely. So before we talk about Real Queers, I just want to get to know you a bit. I read that you grew up in a very religious family in the 90s. How did that go? How was that for you when you kind of knew or you was developing into like the LGBT community?
It's weird because my upbringing was. I didn't have a basis for comparison. I didn't realize it was particularly strict. It was just how my family did things. Its impact on my identity, I think that there was probably a lot more shame involved for me because obviously there's the attachment of hell as a punishment for how I feel. But yeah, I mean, just growing up as a kid in church, I love church, man. The music, the vibe, it was nice.
I wasn't expecting you to say that. I'm really surprised by that response, you know.
Yeah,
But
no,
now,
church is a fun place to be. I think people people think because of the rules and stuff that it's very, very regimented. But when you consider the fact that we come from musical history as Black people, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of energy. It's good fun.
Now, I had planned to say that you're now liberated and you found yourself, but it sounds like you was all right anyway.
No, do you know what? I think the shame that you carry in being so different from what the church prescribes you to be as a good human being, I'm definitely liberating from that. There are still like struggle days, but I don't necessarily feel like being in church is like being encaged. You see what I'm saying? You make a decision to live your life a particular way because you believe that there are spiritual benefits from it. And when you realize that those spiritual benefits aren't necessarily applicable to you anymore, you're like, okay, cool. So I can live my life how I want. And that's the liberation I received.
So did you still find you had to find or muster some courage to live your true liberated self?
Yeah. And every day. Every day. I think the first 7 years of your life are the ones that form you the most, and that's where I spent my time. The first 7 years was in church. So every day I'm kind of battling with that idea of whether or not I'm breaking the rules. Should I be doing this? Am I comfortable doing that? Like, am I happy to speak out about who I am, knowing that the people that I grew up around have a particular way of thinking about me? So, yeah.
Wow. I can't even remember my first 7 years, to be honest. What happened in those 7 years that I've like suppressed those memories? It's frightening.
Yeah. You should look into it. You know, it's an interesting journey once you start to delve into why you are the way you are now.
Oh, I thought I had quite a pretty normal nuclear family, but maybe not. I have to be careful. I can see my mum. So, as humans, how should we talk about gender? Because we never really talk about gender. I've really noticed this conversation, this movement happening, for me anyway, really recently.
I think our conversation around gender needs to be more open. I think that we need to not be scared to ask people's pronouns. I think we need to challenge ourselves to use pronouns that don't fall within the ones that we learned growing up. I mean, I'm always having conversations about whether or not they, them is a valid pronoun because, well, you're not in multiple people. They, them is for like 3 or 4. I'm like, no, not necessarily. People don't know the gender. So in order to kind of open up people's understanding of gender differences, we do have to have that conversation a lot more and be more open to hearing people's arguments, because there will be some.
So what does pride mean to you? Because you must be such a proud person to present and to be strong in your truth.
I am trying to gain pride, if I'm being really honest with you. I think that, like I said, my upbringing differs greatly to who I am and how I live my life now. And I was in South Africa 2 years ago, and we were talking about pride and what pride means. And somebody in the audience said that for them, pride was the opposite of shame. And that was like, I don't know, it was a really pertinent moment for me, because I realized that I still carried a lot of shame with regards to my identity, how much of my life that people knew and were aware of. So yeah, it was coming back from South Africa where I was just like, do you know what? This is who I am, and who doesn't like it, doesn't like it, but I can't carry the shame anymore. So yeah.
It's very deep. I think if we're taught anything at 7, it must be, we should be taught that we have to be proud and accept who we are, however that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people are taught to be proud of who they are, but what they've got to battle with is the structure of society around them. So when society presents a very binary environment, when society shows you men and women walking down the streets holding hands, any differences to what you see predominantly feels like something you should be embarrassed about. And I think that the prevalence of these conversations that you're doing, and the number of platforms and pride organizations that have been set up, I think is important in breaking down that idea of, you know, man, woman, husband, wife. Everyone can just be free to live and exist as they are, how they are.
Good. I'm glad you're speaking so openly, because I'm learning a lot. I'm still learning loads. There's so much I don't know. So I'm just so grateful that you're being open and candid with us today.
Oh, good.
Tell me about Real Queers, because you're a creative director, you're a producer. Tell me about your platform, Real Queers.
Yeah, so Real Queers was set up to support and celebrate queer people of color around the world. I didn't feel like I had much representation growing up, which probably made my journey a little bit more difficult. So I kind of took it upon myself to find queer people of color that were also prepared to be open and transparent about who they are and how they feel and how they love. And out of that, we've created a series of shows that just puts queer people of color in the spotlight.
Good. It's a nice platform. You did a nice. I've lost what it's actually called. It's like a round table discussion. I know you've done one in South Africa. That's it. That was a really good series.
Yeah, I really enjoy producing those. The differences in opinions and perspectives amongst communities. I mean, the diversity in opinions between the UK and South Africa was crazy, but even in those little units, the opinions are so different because of people's experiences. It's just really interesting to be a part of.
And you also did Perspectives and The Gist. We won't talk about The Gist because I host The Gist.
Oh,
tell me about...
Come on, man, big up yourself.
What's The Gist about? The Gist is presented by me, sat in the same position, talking about news, entertainment, gossip, cheeky, all comes under the LGBT umbrella. So again, like Nick said, it was missing. We don't really have that. If you want any LGBT news, you just go to Pink News or Attitude magazine. Yeah. And everybody in those magazines look the same, and you can guarantee you'll see someone like Lady Gaga in there. And nice ally, but we wanted something different. There's a lot more and a lot differently going out there that's just not being said to us. That's what The Gist was.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell me about Perspective?
Perspectives is a series of documentary shorts. We basically talk to people in the community about matters that are important to them. So in the first season, we interviewed Sade Giliberti about mental health and how to deal with that. We spoke to Reverend Jide Macaulay about being a queer pastor. We spoke to Junior Joy about masculinity in the African family. Yeah, and we also spoke to Nims about motherhood. So yeah, we've got some more seasons coming up, a few more episodes we've got lined up in the bag. Yeah. Good. I literally took time away from editing to sit down and do this with you, so they are coming.
Thank you. I'm excited about that because I loved watching that the first time around. So how was Real Queers, the platform as a whole? How has it been received?
I believe it's been received well. We haven't received any hate mail yet. We had our first troll during lockdown, which means we're definitely touching people that don't want to hear from us. But if you're not getting hate, you're not doing anything. So I was grateful for our little troll. That was fun.
That's it. No attention is bad attention. That's what I always say.
There you go.
What was the next question I was about to ask you? Sorry. So you identify as trans non-binary. You're a queer person of color. Do you see things improving? Has life improved for you? Are things changing?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. I think for me to get to this point in my life where I can say, okay, this is how I identify, there's definitely been a progression in the way people have conversations around sexuality and identity, because I don't think I even had the vocabulary to say I'm trans non-binary 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, it's definitely getting better, and I'm only hoping that we can create a world where we don't need to delve into people's sexuality and identity at all. It's just people are who they are, and we all love and treat everyone equally. So
I wonder if we'll ever get into that world. I don't know.
Because do you know what? I hope we do.
Because even sometimes I'm driving or I'm walking around in Brighton and I see two people holding hands. Usually it's two women. And I find myself staring. Not because it's weird, because it's so unusual to see. It's almost like, oh, how nice does that look? And then you realise that your eyes have been stuck on them for a good 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I think so long as you flash them a smile, they know that it's not, a phobia behind the stairs. Yeah. I think everyone's blessed. You know what I mean?
What's next for Real Queers?
Ooh, what's next for Real Queers? I predict Jamaica at some point. I predict Amsterdam. So yeah, we're working on those projects and trying to finish the ones that we started before lockdown in London. So yeah, there's quite a few bits coming up from us in the next few months.
Excellent. Jamaica's going to be different. That's going to be something
come with us, Ashley. Come with us. I think you'll be flavor of the month.
so I can make it on the plane. I get really bad travel sickness. But anyway, where can we watch The Real Quiz? Where is the platform, social media, website?
Yeah, realquiz.com is where you'll find all of our content, written content, visual media. You can subscribe to the YouTube /RealQuizTV. And then, yeah, all the socials at RealQuizTV. That's where we are.
Lovely. Thank you so much for doing this to me today. I really appreciate you talking and being honest and opening up.
No worries. Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you for asking me.
Lovely. Thank you, Nick.
All right, Ash. I'll talk to you later, man.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah, so now we have Andreena. Welcome, Andreena.
Hi, Ashley.
How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. How has lockdown been for you? I know you did a lot of charity work during lockdown.
Yeah, lockdown, to be honest with you, lockdown was very challenging at the beginning. It was very challenging. I spent the first 4 weeks of it on this very sofa, feeling depressed and sad and crying and confused, in this sort of state of just, yeah, confusion, basically, confusion. And so about 4 weeks into it, I said to myself, right, what can I do? What can I do in this situation? What can I do to help even? So I created birthday boxes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Birthday boxes for children. So with my daughter, Renee, who's 18, we went round to several food banks across Waltham Forest, Haringey and Hackney, delivering these food boxes, birthday boxes that contain things like birthday banners, balloons, pencils, all that sort of stuff, to basically help children celebrate their birthdays during this pandemic. You know, children in struggling families who just couldn't afford, you know, when you're thinking about putting food on the table, celebrating your child's birthday is probably not a priority. So we just decided to fundraise. We set up a Just Giving page. We raised £1.5 grand and created 200 birthday boxes and delivered them out to food banks. And that sort of gave me the sort of courage and encouragement to just embrace this lockdown, you know. And
you had no choice almost in the end. We had to embrace it or go down.
Yeah, well, it's been difficult for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, you know. And for me, I'm quite sociable. I like being out. I like meeting new people. I like being, you know, going to gay clubs and socializing with my community. And being at home, although I live with my partner Jermaine and my daughter Renee, it can be quite a lonely place at home. You know, the queer community is an extension of us and who we are, and having to be locked down at home is challenging. It brings with it a lot of challenges.
Now, talking of that community, you just led me into that so nicely. You host Poetry LGBT. Tell me about that night. I've been to so many. I feel like I could tell you about it.
Oh, I love Poetry LGBT. Like, I feel like I am Poetry LGBT. It's such a great space for the LGBTQ plus community to just come together and express themselves through poetry. You know, we started 5 years ago in Tipsy Bar in Hackney, and we were going on the first Sunday of every month. We moved to a more accessible venue, the Two Brewers in Clapham, and we had an event there. And then, you know, lockdown was announced, and then it was like, oh, okay, what do we do now? And initially, being a technophobe as I am, like, you know, as much as I love embracing change and stuff, I'm not really great with technology. So it did take me a while, you know, to get Poetry LGBT going online. So when Pride Month happened in June, with the help of Lila El-Mitwi, not sure if you know her. She's Stonewall's lesbian role model of the year. She both her and a friend of mine, Sue May, and the poetry promoters group on Facebook, yeah, between all of us sort of like, you know, thinking about ideas and whatever, they gave me the confidence and encouragement to say, you can put poetry LGBT online, you know, you can do it. It's challenging, yes, but you know, Zoom is new to all of us. I'd never used Zoom before. So on the first you know, the first Sunday of June, we put on the first Poetry LGBT online, and it was amazing. It was fantastic, and it's one of those things that you think, actually, like, I had reservations about it. I was like, it's online, how are we going to have that community vibe? How are we going to connect with people in the way that we usually do at Poetry LGBT? Everyone says how warm and welcoming the space is, and that's one of the things that we've heard like for the past 5 years. How was I going to recreate that online? So me being me, anyway, I set up my living room to create that sort of like stage area for myself. And yeah, and it's just been amazing. Like, we've had like 60 people come every week in June. We've been able to connect with people all over the UK, all over the world. We've had people from Dubai, we've had people from the Congo, we've had people, like loads of LGBT people all over the world have joined and shared their words with us. And surprisingly, it has had that same community warm feeling.
It has. That's what I've noticed from attending your events, like physically in Tipsy and in the two brewers and watching it online. And what I've always loved about your events, it is so inclusive. No matter where you are, what part of London, online, you're able to see different people. They've got different experiences to share. They're in different parts of life. It's almost like everything in that 2 hours, 3 hours event. We learn and we gain so much from it.
Yeah, we do. It's such a fantastic space, and like, you know, it's one of the things that I feel like I will probably do forever. It's one of those things that regardless of whether anything happens, it doesn't matter. Like, Poetry LGBT is like the core staple of what I do, you know, because it creates that sense of belonging, you know, in our community. We need that belonging. We need people that we can be ourselves around. You know,
how important are these LGBT spaces? Because there's not many LGBT poetry nights, especially in London. I can only really speak for London, but there's not many.
Yeah, well, there are inclusive queer spaces like Spoken Word London that happens in Dalston. I'm not sure if they've taken it online, but they're queer friendly. The host who started it and organised it, he's gay, Pat Cash. So I think him being gay sort of gives gay people the freedom to actually be there and express themselves. So that's quite nice. There's also Insight Poetry as well. That was on last night. That's a good one. That's another queer LGBT poetry night. And in fact, Insight has been going long before Poetry LGBT, you know. So I think we've been 5.5 years. I think they've been like 7.5 years or something like that. But when I started Poetry LGBT, I didn't know that Insight existed. I didn't know that there was a queer poetry event. I was just going to different poetry events in London and found that I didn't find any queer ones. So I just thought, what better thing to do than to create one that we can perform our poetry at.
I think what you've done, because you've made it so inclusive, where there's every kind of different race, every kind of gender, every kind of everything. I think that's what you've done uniquely so well, even online and in person. That's what makes Poetry LGBT, I think, really unique for me.
Yeah, and I think I do that because I'm always trying to champion inclusion within the LGBT community. There's lots of queer events, and I found that if they're run by a white person, let's say, then the audience is majority white. If they're run by a black person, the audience is majority black. That's what I've noticed on my travels. And so what I've done is basically just gone to different queer spaces and told them all about Poetry LGBT. So come along, come to Poetry LGBT, and everyone loves it. So it's then more inclusive. And if you feel welcome in a space, then you're more likely to come back. So it's yeah, we've just got everyone. We've got everyone. It is so diverse, and
that poetry is just so personal. I've been going to your events for years. I went to the Insight Poetry event. How do you physically, mentally, emotionally get up on stage and perform poems that are so personal? For one of yours that stick out for me, you've got the one, I think it's one you always talk about. It's like your life journey about having a front door, and you've got one about Jamaica. Just like how do you physically do that? Like perform to everybody something so personal. I got up to you talking about courage, and then everything just crashed.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just saying that it's really personal, isn't it? I encourage people to write however they feel in the style that they like, and they don't have to go on stage and perform it, or on our virtual screen and perform it. You know, I'm one of the things that I find about poetry is it can be quite exclusive and it can be quite elite. Like, you know, there are different ways of writing poetry, different styles, and like, you know, there's a lot of people in the poetry community that do have a degree in English, and that's brilliant and everything, but I don't care about that. I encourage everyone to write, regardless of what their educational background is, because I found it really therapeutic. And I think as LGBT people, we experience a lot of challenges, you know, whether it's at work or at home, within our families, our friendship groups. There's lots of stuff that happens, and it's all good having club nights where we go out and drink our lives away and party. Yeah. But, you know, there comes a time when we have to sit with ourselves, isn't it? And sort of process things. And I found that writing is one of those ways that I do that. And it's encouraged other people to do it as well, just to write down how they feel. So, yeah.
You're now an inspirational speaker. Has that sort of tied in with the poetry? Was that born from your poetry and your event hosting?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say, do you know what? I'm 39, right? I'm going to be 40 next year. I've been through loads of stuff. Poetry has helped me to write down loads of stuff. I only found poetry in 2014, so it's not even a long time. But over the past 6 years, I've realized that I can tap into how I feel and write about how I feel. And as you can tell, I can speak for England. So why not just put the two together, be an inspirational speaker? I've got a book coming out, and all my poems that I've written over the past 6 years, they're in this book. And I'm going to go around the whole country inspiring people to write about their feelings and their thoughts and putting it down on paper. And I think that's really inspiring. I think that's really inspiring. So yeah, I think if it wasn't for poetry, I don't think that I would have quit my job in the NHS to be an inspirational speaker. I don't think so.
It's good. I love that. Using what you've developed and your talents and your skills to improve people's lives and help them, because I guess from your experiences, you know, people need help and they don't always know how to get that help.
And we have a lot of universal experiences in the queer community, you know, there's, since listening to other people's poems, like I've actually thought like, wow, like they've experienced that, the same thing I've experienced. It's just that sometimes, because we don't all talk about it, we don't know what each of us is going through. So I found it really helps. And obviously playing my handpan, that's a new instrument that I've learned.
What's that?
Learning. It's a handpan. So it originated in Trinidad and Tobago. I've had it specially made for me during this time, and it's just been lovely. So I'm still learning it.
When you do your big inspirational shows, or when you come back to Poetry LGBT Live, you can give us a little handpan as your entry. That can be your theme music.
Yeah, it's so calming. Like, honestly, Ashley, watch YouTube videos on the handpan. It's so calming. Like, we need, especially through this time, like we need to keep ourselves busy in a way where we not that we need to keep ourselves busy, because we also need quiet downtime as well, but we need things that's gonna like inspire us. You know, instruments are really good for that. They're good for taking our minds off the outside world and the confusion that is out there, because I don't understand the coronavirus. I don't want to explain it or go into it or anything like that, but writing poetry, playing my handpan, working on my book, the birthday boxes, all of that has happened during this time, and it's been able to help me to feel quite grounded.
Yeah.
So,
and finally, you've been nominated for a National Diversity Award, so good stuff coming from you this year. It's exciting.
That is exciting. It's really exciting. I found out on the day that they announced, like, I knew I was shortlisted for it because they contacted me, but I found out that I'd been I knew that I was nominated for it because they contacted me and said, you know, you've been nominated, and I was like, wow. And then, but I found out that I was shortlisted for it scrolling through Instagram. And that was like, even now, I'm just like, I can't believe that. Because as an LGBT role model, that comes with a lot of responsibility, in my opinion. You know, that's huge. Like, I'm still processing it today. I only found out last week when they announced it. And I'm still processing it now. And I think because I'm always championing unity within our community and bringing people together and all of that stuff, I think that's well deserved, to be honest.
It is.
Yeah.
I have to wrap up. What Poetry LGBT? When is the next one? I know you've got one coming up on Sunday.
Yeah, so the next one is actually a Childline special edition to go with the festival that, you know, Childline has got going on this week. And yeah, it's on the 2nd of August. It's on Zoom. Follow Poetry LGBT on all the socials at Poetry LGBT. We're on the 1st and 3rd Sunday of every month on Zoom. So it's easy to remember, the 1st and 3rd Sunday of every month on Zoom. But do follow us at Poetry LGBT, and you will, be notified of all of the goings on and all that. Yeah.
Lovely. See, Sunday, I'm so happy for you and your award. Good luck for that. We've got our fingers crossed. We know you're going to win it anyway. You deserve it.
Well, it's really tough. Have you seen all the other shortlisters? Yeah, it's a really tough category. But, you know, I think whatever happens, isn't it? Like, even if I don't win, I just feel chuffed to be nominated and shortlisted, because sometimes, before you go, I don't want to keep you, but when we do all this stuff, like, we don't do it, and we do it from our heart, and we bring ourselves, we bring our energy, and we don't actually think that anyone's watching. So when it's like, not that anyone's watching, but like, I know that people appreciate Poetry LGBT. I know it's been going on for 5 years, but I do it, and I bring myself and I do it. To then be recognized for it and to be shortlisted for an award is almost like proof that it's something. I don't know how to explain that. I'm just happy anyway. I'm just happy about life, happy about things. And if I could probably, you know, inspire the younger LGBT generation to do anything, is to just try and be your authentic self.
What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much, Andreena. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ashley. Take care. Bye.
We'll see you on Sunday. Lovely. So my final guest today is Pussycat Bangkok, as we can see. Hello, welcome, Pussycat Bangkok.
Hello, Ashley. Thank you for having me today, and hello to all the NSPCC fans.
I'm so excited already. I need to dress appropriately for this. First up, is Pussycat Bangkok your real name? I'm going to get dressed as you talk.
Pussycat Bangkok, it is my stage name for my comedy. The reason is, actually, if I am telling you my real Thai name, we will sit here until 100-year Pride anniversary with my Thai name. That's why it's come up with this name, Pussycat Bangkok. Easy to remember, right? Because in my name have both pussy and cock with the bang in the middle. I am started.
Oh my God, where do I start? Where do I begin?
By the way, you look great with your headdress.
I know, I was inspired by you. I have to dress for the occasion. I have to dress for the occasion. You're the last interview. So let me ask you, how was lockdown for you?
Lockdown for me, it is difficult. It is struggling because we are human. We're supposed to have human contract, a social life, a sharing, a caring, a love, a get together. But lockdown sometimes it made me feel isolating and lonely. So we have to find a new way to cope with the new world, like an online world. So I'm pleased now we doing this online. And also one more thing, nowadays we can get out and about again. However, make sure your guys stay safe. And by being stay safe, we should all wear masks. However, every time I am wearing my mask, people tend to look at me. I'm not sure why. I just try to be safe like most people. You know, like when I go to Tesco and I am wearing this mask, actually.
Well, Kat, nothing is going in that mask, definitely.
It's just a normal mask, right? A middle-aged housewife going for food shopping wearing these masks. Go for it. So what I want to say is, if now you can go out and about, but be alert, be careful, and stay safe.
Lovely. Now, tell us a little bit about you. So your backstory was, you was in the Big Brother house, the good one on Channel 4 with Davina.
Oh yes, I was in the Big Brother when it was still in black and white. Channel 4 call it a social experiment, but most people remember us as a circus freak show, very different from your generation of Love Island.
Well, now you're a stand-up comedy and you perform a lot of LGBT venues, don't you?
Yes, and I absolutely love it because for me, when I go to LGBT venue, I feel like I am a proud ally because I believe that LGBT shouldn't be excluding. It should be visible. It should be together. Because the more it is joining together between the LGBT community and LGBT ally, that means it is stronger together. That means we bring the world of the equality love, one love together, and by being together, we are stronger.
I love that. So it's more than you just finding boyfriends and hookups to your gay friends. You are strong, you're proper behind the LGBT community.
Yes, and so many times I must tell you this. I went out with my trans friend, I went out with my gay friend, and I did experience. They've been bullied, they've been speaking to, they've been laughed at. And I would love to say that in my past over 40 years, so many times I speaking out, so many times that I visible for this movement, and I want to say that you don't have to be an LGBTQ person to campaign for the LGBT right. You can be a straight ally who always proud, who always standing together, holding the LGBT hand and move forward together.
I love that. We all need a Pussycat Bangkok in our lives in some form. This thing is so heavy. Let me ask you about your comedy. It can be quite gay, What do you do? Give us a little taste of the sort of stand-up comedy you do.
Okay, for example, at the moment we still on interview with the Childline Pride. I am not going to start doing any of my ping pong show. Then this is not Pornhub. We will strictly carry on with the interview. And I am from Thailand, the land of smiles. But when I am smiling at people, often they think I come to sell a DVD or deliver a Thai takeaway. Worse than that, sometimes people think I am walking around, offer a Thai massage with a happy ending.
That's so naughty.
That's a little bit about my comedy. But the reason I have people said my comedy quite gay, I think for me, I have British traditional drag queen as my inspiration. I feel comfortable to walk into a lot of gay or LGBT venue. And I feel like for me, the gay is mean happiness. Every time I am walking in, it brought me happiness and I feel welcome. So I hope in every straight bar or every cabaret venue is welcoming all the LGBT community the same. So we can all sit together, laugh, enjoy, and have fun together.
I love that. So what work, charity work, community work have you done with the LGBT community?
How long do you have? Can we sit here a long time? But for me, if anyone asks me, I am too happy to support all the LGBT charity. I doing a lot for Moses, for underage, under 18, between 13 and 16 children that's been bullied in school because they're LGBT and they're looking for some community to come in to be together. I give a speech for that. I am always supporting cancer is a drag. So for the LGBT person who have cancer and they need help, they need support, with money, with activity, and I am also doing a lot for Albert Kennedy Trust. If you need LGBT people who've been kicked out from home, homeless, need somewhere to stay, and still there are so many more actually that the opening door for the older person, LGBT, like there are a lot of old age pensioners who doesn't have a family, who need help, who need support. So doesn't matter if you young, you old, in every generation that need help and support. So we get together and we helping them, sharing with them.
I want to ask you, because you was on huge TV shows, everybody knew who you were at the time. About 2008, I think you was on. Now you do stand-up comedy. What advice would you give to like the young LGBT people that could be facing bullying? Because I'm sure you've had to handle a lot in your time.
Yes, I have a lot of experience. Cyberbullying and face-to-face bullying. What I try to say is, be positive, be true to yourself. No matter what anyone said about you, be strong and make sure you also find a friend hand, hold their hand, have an ally with you in your position. Because in this world, there is not everyone who violence, who nasty, but sometimes standing on your own can feel depressing and isolating. So by having someone with you, as I always said, stronger together.
What a beautiful message, Kat. I love that message. Before we go, 2 questions. where can we find you? Have you got any social media, Instagram, website, YouTube?
Yes, I have all of that, and also Grindr and Pornhub account as well. However, to look for me, it is hashtag Pussycat Bangkok, as it is hashtag Pussycat Bangkok, cat with a K.
I love it. Okay, last question. Can you leave us, please, 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 with a happy ending?
Show me your hand. You have your hand ready?
Yeah.
And this, I wouldn't leave you without a happy ending, because I think this is what you're expecting from a Thai woman. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, yeah.
And for the prize special, if you're happy and you're proud, you clap your hand. If you're happy and you're proud, you clap your hand. If you're happy and you're proud and you really want to show, if you're happy and you're proud, you clap your hand.
I can't even see you anymore, Kat. I've got tears in my eyes.
Oh. Happy Pride to everyone who's watching, and love you a lot. Thank you so much for having me today, and hope you all help support and donating for Childline today as well.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kat. I really do appreciate that. You left us on such a high, happy celebration note. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. On the cushion. Okay. Lovely. Well, that was it. That was Ashley and friends. It's me and my LGBT friends talking all things LGBT for the NSPCC and Childline. Thank you so much for having me, and for all my guests today, Josh Rivers, Andreena, Nick Dawes, and Pussycat Bangkok. She left us with a smile and this incredible headdress. If you want to find me, have a chat, slide in my DMs, you can do that. Just search Ashley Conrad UK on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm everywhere. Thank you so much for watching.